Thank you. My name is Robert. I'm here with Mike. We're both with HCLSoftware, the largest software company you have never heard of. $1.7 billion in sales, 8,500 employees. We have a little booth on the show floor, but at the end of the day, I'm actually a researcher and an MIT nerd. And how many of us have actually read the latest threat intelligence reports and the breach report from Verizon, CrowdStrike, all 130 pages of the Verizon Pro? It went on and on, right? Okay, I'm doing you a favor because I read it for you, and I'm going to summarize a lot of the salient points, and I'm going to give you a roadmap that you can use that's pragmatic, right? And you don't even have to buy my software, right? I'm not here to schlep the software. I'm here to tell you what the analysis is. Okay, number one, cybersecurity is becoming everybody's business. Did you know that Gartner is reporting that 89% of all organizations surveyed now say that the C-suite is responsible for controlling cyber risk? The problem is they don't know how to do it. They do not have any tools to do it. The latest example, of course, is mighty Microsoft, who went on record as saying they are going to hold their business executives accountable for controlling risk. And they're going to hold bonuses and stock options if they don't control risk. So the question is, how would you be able to do that? Before we get to that, I'm going to show you some startling stats that should not surprise you. Number one, crime losses, cybercrime losses are 52 times greater than cybersecurity vendor expenses. So we invested almost $200 billion in cybersecurity, but we lost, look at that, $10.29 trillion in this last year. This is projected to get better or to get worse, and the answer is it's projected to get worse. Okay, it's projected to go to 68x by 2029 if we keep doing the same things. So, my friend and your friend, Albert Einstein, said that if you keep on doing the same things and you expect a different result, that is the definition of insanity. So the question you have to ask yourself is, what should we be doing differently? What should we be doing differently? So, what should we change? Now, in order to figure out what we should be changing, what I did is I went back to the MITRE attack matrix. This is an eye chart, right? Anyone who goes to the attack matrix will see the eye chart. So instead of taking you through dozens of TTPs, I would submit to you the following. Number one, you can't do anything about reconnaissance. If they're going to be scraping and looking on the dark web and so on, you can't help that. You also can't do much about resource development. But I would submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that you can absolutely, positively do something about initial access. Right now, they actually show lots of boxes of TTPs in the initial access column, but I would argue to you that it really comes down to three known ways. There are only three known ways to get into your computing estate: abuse of credentials, phishing, and exploitable vulnerabilities. And you'll see this is just over the last few years. Look at this incredible change, and this is from Verizon's latest breach report. You'll notice that credential abuse is going down. Why? Because people are actually getting smart about using MFA, right? Unless you have access to the email and to the phone, you're not getting in. So you're seeing that down. Phishing, it's flat. Why? Because you're always going to fool a certain number of people. But the one that we should all be freaked out about is exploitation of vulnerabilities. Why is that going up? You have to ask yourself why it's going up, and the reason I would submit you need to ask that is because exploitation and remediation of exploitable vulnerabilities definitively denies the exploit use by the adversary. What do I mean by that? When you apply a Oracle or a Microsoft security patch, you're not 50 or 60% better. It's 100% better. Adversary can no longer use the RCE, can no longer do whatever it is that they would want to do, right? It's at zero. You take log4j, you remediate the vulnerable class file, and it is gone, right? You cannot use the exploit. So why isn't the exploitable vulnerability attack surface at zero? Why is it not at zero? Okay, so I'm going to give you some analysis that you won't find anywhere else why it's not at zero. Point one, You won't see this chart anywhere else because we built this chart. And you can build it too. Just go to the National Vulnerability Database. You pull out the new vulnerabilities identified year by year. You graph this, and you will see that there's some really weird stuff going on. Look at what's happened since 2019. In 2019, approximately 17,000 new vulnerabilities identified. In 2024, the number 38,000. More than twice as many. It's going up at this huge rate. Why is it? Okay, I would submit to you, my analysis is that there's two things happening. Number one is that what are vulnerabilities? They're mistakes in coding that a bad guy can use. So there's a lot more mistakes. What accounts for a lot of mistakes? What happened in 2019, 2020? We all lived through it, right? Pandemic. Everybody got sent home who could be sent home. And we crammed a lot of stuff into the cloud, and we rejiggered everything so that you can actually go home, right? So there was a ton of new coding to send people home, and we made mistakes. That's what happened. So you'll see there that I drew exactly what happened in that time period. Now, what's weird is that pandemic was declared officially over in November 2023. So why is it that the curve is now even sharper? Why is it even steeper now? Okay, if you've been going to any of the keynotes, they're actually saying the same things that I'm saying. What they're saying is that it's because of AI. Not only are we recoding all of our software to incorporate AI capabilities, but we are also using AI coding assistance. And this is not a bash on AI, but if you look at the latest studies by 5 Stanford researchers who looked at a long-term usage of AI coding assistance, you will see that 98% of coding groups are using AI coding assistance, but they thought they were creating more secure code, but they are making significantly less secure code. So I think that this is not only tied for number 1 for the initial access vector, but it's going to overtake it next year, and I think that you're going to see this chart start skyrocketing. That's Robert's prediction. We'll see if I'm right. We'll see you next year at Black Hat to see whether Robert's right or not. Now, that's the number 1 reason, is there's a massive number of new vulnerabilities. Second reason is that organizations are taking weeks to remediate known exploited vulnerabilities, but adversaries take less than 5 days to mass exploit. You don't believe me? Go download the free Verizon DBIR or Data Breach Investigations report, and you'll see what I'm saying. Also, it takes adversaries less than 5 days. That's another cool chart. You'll see that actually the last report I saw was closer to 4 days, right? So 4 days to mass breakout, but it takes you like a month to actually patch them. Right, reason number 3, and I'm going to move right along here because they only gave us 20 minutes. Number 3, the Conway's Law. How many of you are familiar with Melvin Conway back from the 1967? And he said that organizations are constrained to produce designs and output which mirror the way that they communicate with each other and the way that they're organized amongst each other. And okay, I found this as a joke because I was trying to find a diagram of Conway's Law, so it's a joke on the left-hand side. But I think it's funny because I don't know about you, but that is how I tend to think about these large organizations that we all know. I do perceive that Oracle has a org structure where they have a giant legal team that is going to sue the bejeebers out of anybody. And do I perceive that Microsoft tends to have very adversarial relationships among their product groups? Yes. Yes. This is what these organizations are like, how they communicate, how they're organized, and so their output tends to be very similar to that. Now, okay, if you take a look at us, how many of us have, show of hands, how many of you have mobile defense teams, endpoint defense teams, network defense teams, server defense teams? How many of those groups actually talk to each other on a continuous basis? Yes, that's the same thing I heard in Amsterdam a couple months ago. They never talk to each other. And you'll notice I also put IT ops in there, and I also put the C-suite in there. How often do those groups get together and talk about whether security is in a good shape? And the answer is they don't do it. Okay, as a result, we are victims of Conway's Law. We have all these various silos. We need to break out of the silos. Okay, Another example of Conway's Law. We are victims of Conway's Law. Did you know that of the 38,000 vulnerabilities identified last year, that approximately 33% of them were actually known and classified as critical or important? But, and here's the important but, only 9% were actively used as known exploited vulnerabilities. Less than 10%. Less than 3,800. Okay, more like 3,700. So if we have a communication structure amongst security and IT where we're paying attention to these 38,000, and I know not everybody has the 38,000, but the point is we're looking at a lot bigger swath of things that we need to do that perhaps we don't need to do. And this is because of Conway's Law. We're just looking at a tranche that we're communicating about. The point is, we are a victim of Conway's Law because we are not thinking like adversaries. Adversaries think in terms of objective. How do I get to the objective? What's the path? Where's the mechanism? How do I go left or right to get to that objective? That's what they're looking for. And so the bottom line is we need to reorganize as defenders to think and act like adversaries. And I'm not talking about every once in a while doing red team, blue team, purple team, or tabletop exercise. We need to organize ourselves to actually think and look this way. So those are the three big reasons. But we at HCLSoftware like to think of ourselves as, if that's the disease, then we're the doctors. We're here to help you with remediation of known exploitable vulnerabilities, to help you create a CI/CD mechanism and process where you, by definition, have less vulnerabilities in your code, whether it's code that you write or whether it's code that you buy and deploy. Either way, we're your wellness team. And with that, I introduce you to my good friend, Michael.
Thank you, Robert. Michael Khusid, I'm a head of, thank you. I'm a head of AppScan product management, and I work on the code that you write. So we talked about vulnerable code in the applications. We know the solution to that. The solution to vulnerable code is DevSecOps. It's a process we have developed, which is a process we decided to talk about shifting left maybe about 5 years ago, and the process has resulted in not much. Not much. Developers did learn about security, which we appreciate. That was a kind of one of the positive outcomes of shift left. But the fundamental problems of shifting left stayed that developers really don't prioritize security. Developers prioritize speed, on application agility, on new feature development, on using AI right now, because vibe coding is now cool, even among the best developers. That's how they learn new languages. By the way, a really cool way to learn a new language, just go and vibe code in a language you don't know. It'll work. But that's it for shift left. That's all the shift left has achieved. What we need to do right now is shift everywhere. And shift everywhere means to have a gates and have recognition across the organization, from the developers through the teams, through the security professionals, through executives. Executives, very important. Remember, from Robert, they are on the hook for this kind of stuff, for reducing the risk, right? And that means shifting everywhere. SBOM is now standard. Make sure that you require SBOMs of the development teams, and you provide compliance and risk remediation, which I'm going to talk about later. So AppScan is one of the examples here. I'm using it as more of a case study, even though it's my product. But that's a shift everywhere example. It's an end-to-end solution, starting at the very beginning of the development diagram to the very end where you provide a compliance and risk reports. And it has lots of stuff. Lots of stuff from AppSec we probably heard about. But it's not about tools, especially it's not about individual tools anymore. We are way past that point of time in the process. It's about the process. It's about the process where the tools have to work together. Developers have to use the tools. Yes, that's part of the shift left, which still remained. But it's shift everywhere. The security teams need to use the same tools in the same platform to have the same communication with developer. That's breaking the walls that Robert was talking about from the Conway's Law, and then ultimately provide executive visibility. So talking about executive visibility, there's a great thing here called value stream management. And that's what value stream management means. It's a tool which oversees the development process and provides governance metrics to executive teams. So remember, if you talk about, go to executive, talks about, we found 37,000 vulnerabilities, or we found 35,000 vulnerabilities. That's probably a big achievement, minus 2,000, right? You resolved 2,000 issues. first of all, it's huge. Second, it's meaningless, right? There's going to be metrics, which are business metrics that you need to derive from the security to be able to communicate to executives, evaluate your management, do it. Second of all, you need to drive the number of vulnerabilities down. As Robert was talking about, not all of them make a difference. So the correlation of the results to the vulnerabilities, you see that the known exploitable vulnerabilities, if you can do that, you're going to do great service to reduce the risk in your organization in the code that you write. And lastly, AI, because you can't talk in 2025 in the stage and not mention AI. AI does help fix things. You have to use it as a surgical tool. Wipe coding will probably produce more vulnerabilities. As specialty security assistants, which fix the code, and there are multiple vendors offering them right now, will actually make the code better. Because they don't try to analyze tools, they don't try to guess, which is AI does a really good job. Guesses, it does not tell you that it guessed, it gives you a certain result, right? AI is never in doubt. When you use security tools to analyze an issue, and then you use AI to help recover the issue. So, as I said, AI tools integrated in the process, spanning developer interactions. I see this example is in GitHub, all the way to the metrics that you produce to the executive team for the risk will help you communicate the business value of it and will help you break down the walls. Now, I was talking about the code that you write. As we know, in all organizations, we are not only about code we write, we also buy a lot of code from third parties. With that, I'll give it back to Robert to talk about the second part.
All right. Okay, vulnerability remediation. Okay, I want to introduce you to vulnerability remediation, which is a fancy way of saying for the code that you actually deploy, how can you actually act differently and act more like an adversary, as I mentioned. Okay, one way to do that is with CyberFocus Analytics. Now, what CyberFocus Analytics does is it's a system where we take everything in BigFix. BigFix is a vulnerability remediation product. So what BigFix does is it patches at scale. So if you have 500,000 laptops, 70,000 servers, we are used worldwide. We have approximately 145 million endpoints, including servers, laptops, workstations, and so on, under management, and we can patch them at scale. What we've done with CyberFocus is we've pulled data from MITRE, so from the MITRE Advanced Threat APTs, the Advanced Persistent Threats APTs, and we've pulled that in, and we can show you what your exposure is to various threat groups. So CVEs that they are known to be using, right? So if you're worried about MITRE APT3, which I believe is the Chinese Ministry of State, you want to know what they're hacking with. They're hacking with the following known exploitable CVEs. We will tell you what your exposure is across your entire ecosystem. Again, whether it's a server, or it's a cloud endpoint, or it's a laptop or a workstation, or a mobile device, we will tell you where your open CVEs are. And we'll, not only that, but we have the ability to actually patch it for you and to close off the surface. In addition to that, how many of you guys pay attention to the CISA Known Exploited Vulnerabilities database, CISA KEVs? Okay, we are the only product in the market that can tell you at a glance, without additional scanning, where you are in your CISA KEV exploitable vulnerabilities remediation. If you see any bubbles on the chart at all, then it means you have not remediated something that's on the KEV catalog. The bigger the bubble, the higher the density. The higher the bubble, the greater the number of machines. The darker the bubble, the worse the CVSS score is. We're the only ones who do this. I also, by the way, designed this for the C-suite. So you just say, listen, you see, on this chart, there are no bubbles. That means we're clean. If you see a bubble, that means we're not clean. It's that simple. I designed this not only for the operations people in IT and security, but also for the C-suite to be able to do that. Last but not least, we are the only ones that for the MITRE APTs will tell you the most efficient, least disruptive way of doing your patching strategy. Okay, that's patented. We're looking at filing a patent on that because we think it's such a unique technology. Okay, we also have what we call insights for vulnerability remediation. You're like, well, wait a minute, how about Tenable and Qualys and Rapid7? The answer is that we're partnered with them. They're our friends. The vulnerability scanning teams use those all the time. We directly integrate with them. We will pull in from their APIs, and we will be able to tell you, does it think that it has the vulnerability? And then we'll tell you, do we think we patched it? Because we're the patching thing, right? So this gives the IT team a seat at the security table. In addition to that, we will collect all the content needed to do the patching, and then we will schedule the patching and do it at scale. So that's what IVR is. Also, if there's a mismatch, if you say, hey, we're seeing this vulnerability, we can say, well, we think that we applied a patch to that, and therefore, that's a cause for discussion, right? That's a cause for discussion between security and IT. So my point is, we're doing functionality that pulls the teams together rather than separates them. So we're taking security and IT, we're mushing them together. Last but not least, we have, and I'm going to take one slide with a few builds to talk about this, because I told you that the C-suite is responsible for cyber risk, but they have no tools to fix it and to measure it. Okay, we have just built one that measures it. Think about it this way. A measure of cyber risk is the exposure time to exploitable vulnerabilities in your ecosystem on critical equipment. Okay, the exposure time. Time is a measure of risk. So if you have a machine that's an e-commerce server, or it's an edge server, and it has Log4j on it, if you remediated it in 10 days, you will have twice the risk than if you remediated it in 5. So time is a measure of risk, and we've built this concept into the product. This is how it works. There are 3 requirements that you have to have in order for a business person to be able to control risk. It has to be linked to business goals and cyber risk, reducing the exploitable vulnerability exposure time. It has to be based on things that can be controlled. In this case, it's patching processes and tooling for doing remediation. And last, it has to have high quality metrics. How long did it take to patch the critical system? Suppose that you are a bank in the United States, online banking server. Suppose that you lose $50 million every hour that that thing is down. That's a critical system. The days to remediate security patches on those systems is a measure of cyber risk. What's also interesting is that it's something that the business guys can understand. Why? Because if you went up and said, okay, I've gotten together with the security and the IT teams, we're going to move to a different patching cadence for security. Every time I ask the CEO or the line of business owner, how many days of exploitable vulnerability exposure do you want? I always get the same answer, 0 days. But if I went up and said, well, your team is saying that it's going to take $20 million extra in people and tooling and resources to do that, are you okay with that? Well, every single one of them said, no. What else you got in your bag? Now, you see what's happening. You want to go to same-day patching? I mean, okay, let me just ask. Does anyone here do same-day patching? Okay, no one does same-day patching. If you said same-day patching, price tag 20 million extra in tooling and people, most people will say no. Well, what that means is that you have to choose a level of risk. All right, CEO, line of business owner, is it going to be 10 days, 20 days? And you know what they're going to say? How much will that cost? So you'll see there's a direct correlation between cost and level of risk. So you can pay the extra 20 million, and I just made that number up, extra 20 million to do same-day patching, or you can say, well, maybe 30-day patching costs you nothing extra, 10-day patching will cost you 5 million extra. You see what's going on there? There's risk and cost. It's going back and forth. Okay, here's the deal. Here's the acid test. If you go and you agree to a 10-day patching cycle that meets all the requirements there, you get hacked and breached on day 12. Whose fault is it? It's security and IT's fault because you said you would patch it within 10 days. But what happens if you get breached on day 8? Whose fault? Business leader's fault. Well, not fault, responsibility. Why? Because they chose the 10-day cycle. The other thing is, have you ever seen these CEOs go out and actually give a press conference after a breach? They usually make things worse. right? I've seen people go out there and just lie through their teeth about what happened. In this case, they can actually have something that they can say. We know what happened, which is that they got breached on day 8, and we know exactly what to do so this never happens again. And the answer is to pay for a 5-day patching cycle, right? And the whole point of this, I'm spending some more time on this because we're all security practitioners. This is a get you out of the blast zone strategy because you're including the C-suite in the decision making. They're responsible for the decision, and they have responsibility for the ramifications of that decision. And can they justify a 10-day or a 5-day or a 30-day cycle in front of their stakeholders? They can control it by giving you and me more money to accelerate the patch cycle. That's what I'm telling you. I know I'm just flogging this a bit, but I like it because it gives you a way to control your own destiny. If you're a CISO in the room, average tenure is 24 months. I'm trying to get you to, as long as you like. That's what's going on here. So this is called a performance against protection level agreement. It's made regarding a cyber risk against a measurable control point. And we're the only ones who have this built into the product, right? So this allows you to have really great discussions. I talked about the IVR product. This is just talking about before and after. So the call to action is simply this. I recommend that you assess your security gaps, both in your CI/CD pipeline as well as on things that you deploy. Align your security with your business goals. Automate your security whatever is possible so that you can do more with less. Adopt a unified security approach, and then take proactive steps now. And with that, we're done. Chris is calling time. Thank you for your time. It's great to be here with you.